Europe. American foreign policy has long benefited from cooperation with the countries of Europe, generally the EU, and any conservative administration should build on this resource. Yet the transatlantic relationship is complex with security, trade, and political dimensions. First, the Europe, Eurasia, and Russia region is made up of relatively wealthy and technologically advanced societies that should be expected to bear a fair share of both security needs and global security architecture. The United States cannot be expected to provide a defense umbrella for countries unwilling to contribute appropriately. At stake after 2024 will be examining the status of the Wales Pledge of 2% of gross domestic product toward defense by NATO members. The new administration will also want to encourage nations to exceed that pledge. Second, transatlantic trade is a significant part of the global economy, and it is in the U.S. national interest to amplify it, especially because this means weaning Europe of its dependence on China. However, there are also transatlantic trade tensions that disturb the U.S. EU relationship and that have been evident across administrations. The U.S. must undertake a comprehensive review of trade agreements between the EU and the United States to assure that U.S. businesses are treated fairly and to build productive reciprocity. Outside the EU, trade with the post Brexit UK needs urgent development before London slips back into the orbit of the EU. Third, in the wake of Brexit, EU foreign policy now takes place without UK input, which disadvantages the United States given that the UK has historically been aligned with many US positions. Therefore, US diplomacy must be more attentive to inner EU developments while also developing new allies inside the EU, especially the Central European countries on the eastern flank of the EU, which are most vulnerable to Russian aggression. South and Central Asia. Many key American interests and responsibilities are found in South and Central Asia, specifically continuing to advance the bilateral relationship with India to mutual benefit is a crucial objective for U.S. policy. India plays a crucial role in countering the Chinese threat and securing a free and open Indo Pacific. It is a critical security guarantor for the key routes of air and sea travel linking East and West, and an important emerging U.S. economic partner. For instance, the 2019 Department of Defense Indo Pacific Strategy Report noted that the Indian Ocean area is at the nexus of global trade and commerce, with nearly half of the world's 90,000 commercial vessels and two-thirds of global oil trade traveling through its sea lanes. The region boasts some of the fastest growing economies on Earth. Meanwhile, the threat of transnational terrorism remains acute. The humiliating withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan after a 2 year military campaign has created new challenges. It has provided an opportunity to reset the deeply troubled U.S. Pakistan relationship and reassess U.S. counterterrorism strategy in the region. The long-standing India-Pakistan rivalry and tensions regarding the disputed territory of Kashmir continue to pose risks to regional stability, especially because both countries are nuclear powers. The State Department's role in strengthening the regional security and economic framework linking the U.S. and India is crucial. In addition, the department has important functional responsibilities in dealing with a range of threats from nuclear proliferation to transnational proliferation. While American statecraft should also seek to improve bilateral relations throughout the region, U.S. policy must be clear eyed and realistic about the perfidiousness of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan and the military political rule in Pakistan. There can be no expectation of normal relations with either. The priority for statecraft is advancing the U.S. Indian role as a cornerstone of the Quad, a cooperative framework including the U.S., India, Japan, and Australia. The Quad is comprised of the key nations in coordinating efforts for a free and open Indo Pacific. It is an overarching group that nests the key U.S. bilateral and trilateral cooperative efforts that facilitate U.S. collaborative efforts across the Indo Pacific. The State Department should also encourage the Quad Plus concept that allows other regional powers to participate in Quad coordination on issues of mutual interest. Further, the State Department must support an integrated federal effort to deliver a revamped regional strategy for South Asia, as well as leading the execution of key tasks to implement the strategy. The Arctic. Because of Alaska, the U.S. is an Arctic nation. The Arctic is a vast expanse of land and sea, rich in resources including fish, minerals, and energy. For example, the region is estimated to contain 90 million barrels of oil and 1/4 of the world's undiscovered natural gas reserves. The Arctic is lightly populated. Only 4 million people in the world live above the Arctic Circle, with more than half of those living in Russia. Only around 68,000 people in Alaska live above the Arctic Circle. However, the sheer immensity of the Alaskan Arctic means its population density is less than one person per square mile. The United States has several strong interests in the Arctic region. The rate of melting ice during summer months has led to increased interest not only from shipping and tourism sectors, but also from America's global competitors who are interested in exploiting the region's strategic importance and accessing its bounty of natural resources. In the not too distant future, there will be a growing interest in the Arctic from both state and non state actors alike. China has been open about its interest in the region, primarily as a highway for trade, but also for its rich natural resources. While the PRC's increasing intervention in Arctic affairs is a bit strained because it does not have an Arctic coastline, Russia does, and Russia has made no secret of its view that the Arctic is vital for economic and military reasons. Russia has invested heavily in new and refurbished Arctic bases and cold weather equipment and capabilities. The North Star of U.S. Arctic policy should remain national sovereignty, safeguarded through robust capabilities as well as through diplomatic, economic, and legal attentiveness. The next administration should embrace the view that NATO must acknowledge that it is, in part, an Arctic alliance. With the likely accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO, every Arctic nation except for Russia will be a NATO member state. NATO has been slow to appreciate that the Arctic is a theater that it must defend, especially considering Russia's brazen aggression against Ukraine. NATO must develop and implement an Arctic strategy that recognizes the importance of the region and ensures that Russian use of Arctic waters and resources does not exceed a reasonable footprint. The U.S. should unapologetically pursue American interests in the Arctic by promoting economic freedom in the region. Economic freedom spurs prosperity, innovation, respect for the rule of law, jobs, and sustainability. Most important, economic freedom can help to keep the Arctic stable and secure. The U.S. should work to ensure that shipping lanes in the Arctic remain available to all global commercial traffic and free of onerous fees and burdensome administrative, regulatory, and military requirements. While this should be the next administration's policy with respect to all countries that might seek to block free flowing commercial traffic, the next administration will clearly have to exert substantial attention toward Russia. Both the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. Navy are vital tools to ensure an unmonopolized Arctic. It is imperative that the Navy and Coast Guard continue to expand their fleets, including planned icebreaker acquisitions, to assure Arctic access for the United States and other friendly actors. The remote and harsh conditions of the Arctic also make unmanned system investment and use particularly appealing for providing additional situation awareness, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The Coast Guard should also consider upgrading facilities such as its Barrow Station to reinforce its Arctic capabilities and demonstrate a greater commitment to the region. The People's Republic of China has declared itself a near Arctic state, which is an imaginary term non existent in international discourse. The United States should work with like minded Arctic nations, including Russia, to raise legitimate concerns about the PRC's so called Polar Silk Road ambitions. Concerning Greenland, the opening of a U.S. consulate in Nuuk is welcome. A formal year round diplomatic presence is an effective way for the U.S. to better understand local political and economic dynamics. Furthermore, given Greenland's geographic proximity and its rising potential as a commercial and tourist location, the next administration should pursue policies that enhance economic ties between the U.S. and Greenland.